Hey everybody, Charles here. This week Dan and I speak to Richard Wetterman, our friend and fellow entrepreneur, and the other half of the Kurt and Richard twin team that we enjoy spending time with so much. We'll discuss the direct primary care model and how Richard found out about it and became a fan and evangelist of the model. And hope you enjoy. Please share any feedback with us at mindfullymasculine@gmail.com. And if you'd like an exclusive extra episode every week, sign up at our Patreon at mindfullymasculine.com/Patreon, Patreon, for the bargain basement price of $1 a month. Thanks.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm great. I survived the hurricane. Fortunately, no damage.
Yeah,
just a little flooding.
Very little damage on my end. No damage really. I was without power till Sunday night, I guess. So longer than most of the people I know that had a power loss, but big deal. It was fine. It was really fine Friday night. Friday night was cool, so having the window open and the breeze blowing through was nice. Saturday, not so much. Saturday I got kind of hot.
Yeah. I fortunately only lost power for 3 days. I really thought it was going to be like a week based on everything else I saw in Florida that was going on. I figured they'd send all the workers and utility people over to the other areas. I was kind of surprised I got it back, and all the meat in my freezer was about to thaw out and go bad. So I ran over to U-Haul to grab a truck, and I was going to load the freezer and take it over to my girlfriend's place. And just as I opened back the U-Haul up to the garage, opened the garage door, had to do a little bio break, had to go to the bathroom while I was sitting there. All the lights came back on, all the power goes back on. I hear all
Nice.
the UPS making noises and stuff. So just in the nick of time. And so instead of having to completely unpack the freezer, it was a big, huge chest freezer. I just had to return the van, and ended up only spending $50 at U-Haul. And thankfully, that was the worst of it for me.
Yeah, I rented one of those vans last summer when my girlfriend and I went up to Minnesota for a wedding. We could not find any decent deals on rental cars, so we just got one of those U-Haul cargo vans and used that to drive to the wedding. And we had actually thought about doing the same thing when we went to Maui, because we had a hard time finding a good deal on a rental car there too. So sometimes you can sort of beat the system a little bit by picking up a vehicle at U-Haul.
Oh, that's hysterical. I never thought about that, but sometimes when I'm traveling, especially in the Northeast, it's something like $120 a day for the low end cars. It's like, are you crazy?
Yeah, just get a U-Haul pickup truck or a U-Haul cargo van and use that for $19 a day. Especially if you don't have to drive much. If you're in a place where you need a vehicle but you don't have to drive it a lot, you don't have good public transportation, or you don't want to Uber for any reason. Yeah, just beat the system, grab a U-Haul.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So I moved on Saturday. I went from near the river in DeBerry down to the Disney area. I'm in a campground there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm going to be there through the end of January, and my lot is very sloped. And we're recording this after we had our interview with Richard, so you may hear some of the same topics brought up briefly in that interview as well. But my lot's very sloped, and so I'm having to buy these leveling blocks that they're like just big Lego bricks that you can put under the wheels of your RV, and I'm gonna install those today. And because, man, living life on a 4-degree incline is no way to be, man. It is not fun.
Doesn't sound like much. Only 4 degrees. What? There's 360
4 degrees
in the
does not
circle,
sound like much,
right?
It's enough to stop your cabinets and doors from closing.
Wow.
The bathroom door, the closet door, I have to put a gallon of water, or the hitch and ball for my camper, I have to lay it on the floor in front of it. The cat is not sure what to do because everything is lopsided. I think I only took one shower in the camper since I've been there, and quite a bit of water ended up on the ground. I think that's a result of being on the tilt. I don't think I have a leak. So I've been, I use most campgrounds have like a bathhouse or multiple bathhouses spread out. And I used the one at the campground this morning, and it was actually pretty nice. Hot water, spacious, which my camper shower cannot be described as spacious by any means. So I'm glad I've got other options, but even just sleeping feels a little weird because it's not going from front to back. It's going from left to right. So like if I roll over, I'll just keep rolling.
So it's so funny. So then when you get out of the camper and you start walking around, you have like sea legs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you like kind of walking all tilted to the side? How does it feel like? How does it feel?
It's a bit strange.
How does it feel to live in Ripley's Believe It or Not house?
Yeah. Feels a little bit like that. So
completely upside down. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting it straightened out today. As I referenced before, I had to use trigonometry because I had I know the angle of incline is 4 degrees, and I know the width of my camper is 7 feet. So that gives me one angle and the hypotenuse of a right triangle. So then I had to figure out what the cosine was to determine how much the one side needs to be raised to be level with the other side, and it's about 6 inches.
Okay.
Which 6 inches over 7 feet is
like
is not
inches?
nothing. No, an actual 6 inches, not a storytelling 6 inches.
Not a storytelling.
Yeah. So, I've got to install the blocks today, and I've got to rent another U-Haul pickup truck to pull my camper forward 2 feet, which again, they're cheap. So I don't care.
This episode
$30
of
plus
Mindfully
mileage.
Masculine is sponsored by U-Haul.
It should be. I wish.
When you're out of options.
So that's where we're at. And then, again, I've talked about, I'm looking forward to dinner with you and Lauren and my girlfriend and the Wetterman brothers. Anybody else coming? Is that it?
No, that's one of Lauren's friends.
Okay, nice.
Johanna is coming too as well. So.
Oh, is she at the white party?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Also a big Disney fan, so
Nice.
you'll have something to talk about.
I just got the text from my girlfriend that we're blocked out this weekend, which is an outrage because there are some really good Halloween themed treats right now.
Oh,
and we do not get to go enjoy them. So I may propose a beach trip on Sunday because that's the day we were planning on going to Disney.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go hit the beach instead.
nice. That should be good.
What do you got planned other than?
We'll be doing
dinner tonight and pickleball tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. And then after dinner tonight, we're gonna go see a Guns N' Roses tribute band play the whole Appetite for Destruction album.
Wow.
Over at Tin Roof. So
Nice.
that should be interesting. I'm excited for that. Bring me back.
Yeah,
to
Tin
high
Roof
school.
is a cool venue. I don't know how cool I would find it sober. I haven't been there sober before, so I don't know if it would be as much fun as it is when you had a couple drinks in you.
You gotta like the music. They have a lot of good cover bands there. So
That's true. Yeah,
I'm excited for that. And then tomorrow night, where Laura and I are graduating from our Foxtrot class that we took with Nanette this last 8 weeks, and so we'll be doing that tomorrow night. And
Nice.
I will be doing a graduation for my swing class that I took tomorrow night, and then may go back to the beach on Sunday. We'll see. Need to tan up a little bit. I'm getting pale.
Which beach do you guys do usually?
Usually New Smyrna.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what my closest beach is now that I'm living, on the other side of Disney. It's probably like maybe Cocoa because I'm thinking we just get on the 528 and head straight to the coast. But I'll have to check. I like Satellite Beach. I was there not too long ago, and that's a fun beach. But I don't know. We'll see if the weather works for that. It's gonna start getting a little too chilly for the beach.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I like getting in the water and the Atlantic. It cools down pretty when the temperatures are in the lower to mid 90s during the day. Excuse me. The Atlantic gets a little chilly for me. I'm a little bit of a baby when it comes to that. I like
to put on some more body fat.
No, I'm trying to do the opposite. Yeah, I'm getting ready to turn things around. I've been eating a little crazy lately. Lot of breakfast sandwiches from Wawa. That's going to be tough to kick. They're so
from,
good though.
A lot of commuting for work. What's
commuting for work and commuting for either moving the camper or dealing with the camper or the storm. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff. So
maybe a little stress eating going on there a little bit.
Definitely a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
Right now in my freezer I have, you can buy a bag of the Ben and Jerry's cookie dough that they put in the cookie dough ice cream. You can buy just the cookie dough and just eat that.
Oh yeah.
And so I've got the remnants of a bag of that in my freezer right now.
Oh wow. I'm glad you kept that at your place and didn't bring it over here today.
Yeah, me too.
That's I can't have that in the house.
It's as cookie dough snacks goes, their frozen cookie dough bites are just about the best version going, other than real cookie dough, which the kind that you can possibly get salmonella from. That's the salmonella. Yeah, salmonella.
Yeah.
That's the best kind, like with actual raw egg in it, the kind that could kill you. That's the best kind to eat for sure.
Yeah, I used to steal the beaters from my mom whenever she's making cookies, and she'd yell at me, trying to get me to stop because she claimed that I'd get sick from eating the raw eggs, and it just seemed to light a fire under my butt, make me want more. I'd grab the bowl after that, with a spoon.
I've never gotten sick from eating cookie dough, and I don't know anybody who has. So
look, Stallone was eating the
right?
eggs raw, right? And Rocky, yeah, before they even had any type of inspections for any type of health.
Exactly.
Probably. Yeah. Now, you're good.
Yeah, I was watching a video on a guy who's a health and fitness influencer decided to live a day like The Rock, where he woke up at the time of The Rock, ate all the food that The Rock eats in a day, did all the workouts that The Rock does in a day, and one of the things he had for breakfast was like scrambled eggs, but it was 1 egg plus 4 whites.
Yeah,
it's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I do
not like egg whites. I would do the opposite. I would just eat the yolks.
There's a lot more nutrition in the yolk. That's where all the nutrition is.
Yeah, I think egg whites. I mean, there's some protein in the egg whites, but it's mostly just a filler, right?
It's just protein. It's just there's not much in it, and also in terms of vitamins and minerals, there's not much in there either. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I've never done an egg white anything. I've never eaten an egg white omelet. I've never just scrambled egg whites. I've never had like when I'm eating a fried egg, I mostly care about the yolk, and I could take or leave, mostly leave the white. It's just does not do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, unless you buy the carton of egg whites, which I've done in the past, don't like to do that. It's like, what am I going to do with these yolks? If, you separate the yolks and now you got the whites. I don't like throwing the food away,
Right.
So it's just, part of me is just the imbalance of doing that, so I just have 2 or 3 regular eggs and I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good for usually breakfast. A good breakfast for me is two eggs and 2 sausage patties. That's usually my go-to, or like 4 slices of bacon.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll be working my way back on the straight and narrow. I'm going to try to adopt that breakfast. I did have the goal of trying to eat breakfast at home every day for October, and I already blew that out of the water.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, you can start over. You can start over tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
You could do 30 days. It doesn't have to be the whole month of October. It could go into November, right? So.
Yeah, that's one of the things to remember. It's like if you can eat right or work out right or do almost anything right. I mean, except for some things like, I was going to say, if you can do it right 80% of the time and you get it wrong 20% of the time, you're still doing better than you used to do. And you're probably doing better than most of the other people out there too. If you can, but that doesn't apply to everything. I mean, that doesn't apply to, don't cheat on your wife 80% of the time and it's okay 20% of the time, or don't rob a bank 80% of the time and only do it 20%. There's certain things you got to get right.
Words of wisdom.
Don't crash a plane, 20% of the time or 80% of the time. And yeah, there are some things you have to get right every time, but there are some things that, especially when it comes to trying to improve your personal health, if you get it right most of the time, you can screw up a little bit and you don't have to feel like you burn down the house.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of personal health, this episode that, is coming up, we're talking to our friend Richard Wetterman, who basically, was had not been going to a doctor for a while and did a lot of research and realized, that he could get a lot more of what he's looking for out of a direct primary care doctor. And on this episode, the three of us dig into that and, his personal journey and what he's found, and a couple of other fun things we kind of go down a rabbit hole about. But this was a good one. Thanks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. So, like I said, we recorded that first, so you'll hear a little bit of the stuff we talked about in this intro. You'll hear it in the episode too, but it was fun. I like talking to Richard, and I like people that get so excited about something that they're willing to research it and do some legwork to say, okay, it seems like this is a pretty good solution. Let me dig in and see if it's going to work for me. And Richard knew about direct primary care and thought highly of it for a while before he actually pulled the trigger on it. So, which is usually the best way to make a decision,
Yep. Yeah.
And so I think there's some good stuff to learn. So I don't know. We may do what we did with Dr. Muzzie's conversation, where if I find a good point sort of halfway in, we may split it up so that it'll be available as a the first half you guys will hear with this for free, and then the second half we may put on our Patreon. So if you're interested in hearing the whole thing, again, Patreon, $1 a month. What a deal. And you can get there, mindfullymasculine.com/Patreon, Patreon, Patreon, Patreon.com.
Yeah.
Ding. Well, no, mindfullymasculine.com/Patreon or patreon.com/mindfullymasculine. They both go to the same place.
Well saved.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So, I will go for now, and, I'm going to run a few errands today, and then 6:00 tonight, we're meeting at Charlie's for your birthday dinner. What number is this? 46, 47?
Yeah, let's go with that.
No, what is it really?
We're going to go with that. All right, Charles, I'll see you later.
Okay, bye, Dan.
Bye-bye. Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm great.
What's going on this morning?
What's going on this morning? I've got a unwanted guest in my office.
Oh yeah, I'm here again. Post hurricane, I'm still working out of Dan's spare room. Last time's today though.
I'm kidding about the unwanted guest. The guest has left many seltzers and Keurig coffees in my house as a welcome gift. So
That's
I
true.
appreciate
that.
You did, and there are still some left. I haven't drank it all.
That was what a good guest I am.
Yeah,
I'm sure maybe the cat left you some gifts as well. We'll have to check into your bed later.
Ooh, fingers crossed.
All right. Well, this morning we've got our friend Richard with us. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Gentlemen, how you doing?
Doing good. Looking forward to celebrating Dan's birthday today. Going out tonight and getting a nice fancy steak dinner.
Yeah, you mentioned about looking at the menu. I honestly had not done any research, so I can imagine that it won't be too difficult to choose a lovely plate of fare over there. So,
yeah, it's the usual cuts of steak at Charlie's. Plus, as I mentioned to both you guys a little earlier, I'm leaning toward going with a double cut pork chop for tonight because I've not had a really high quality pork chop made recently. My mom used to cook pork chops for us. She used to pan fry them, and they were always dry as bones. And so whenever I can get a really good one prepared at a restaurant, I try to remember to take the chance.
I remember my dad, he was always a very good cook. I had mentioned before about how he just made this swordfish. It was absolutely phenomenal. So it ruined everybody else's swordfish from that point on. But he was always like, when it comes to pork or pork loins or whatever you do, he's like, you've got to get a thermometer. He's like, and that way you hit a temperature and you take the guesswork out of it, especially when it comes to that. So yeah, nowadays you get an expensive piece of meat. Make sure,
Yeah, I've got the Weber Bluetooth one that goes into the roast or whatever, and you set the alarm on your phone so that it sets off an alert when it reaches the temperature you want, and then it's right then is the time to take it out of the oven and let it rest. So it's pretty nice.
I have one. It's got a little digital clock on it, and then you plug it in, and the geez, I'm going to sound like a stupid. the part that you poke into the actual tip that you put into the meat, and then it's got a long metal cord.
Yes.
And then you can just let it sit out, and then you set the temperature, and then you hear the clock go beep beep. So yeah, it's gorgeous.
Nice. Yeah, last time I made a prime rib, I used it and got it to almost the temperature that I like, and then took the prime rib out of the oven, cut it up, and then did a reverse sear in a real hot cast iron skillet, and did that right before we served it, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Did you season it before you seared it?
No, I don't season food.
Okay.
No, I did. I think probably just some kosher salt and a little bit of pepper. I don't really go too over the top. Now, I mean, basically the higher the quality the meat is, the less seasoning. So if I'm making burgers,
no ketchup.
then I've got some, McCormick's. Yeah, exactly. No ketchup on the prime rib.
Yet you wanted to put hot sauce on the steaks I made when we were here for the hurricane. You're like, oh, I can't eat this.
That's not true, is it?
Yeah, it is.
I wanted hot sauce for the eggs, Dan.
Oh, it was for the eggs. Okay, it wasn't for the fillet. All right,
son of a
you're
bitch.
right. I guess I'm confusing the two. Yeah, you're right. But anyway, I did buy some hot sauce to have it in the house just in case next time.
Hot sauce.
I cannot believe you accused me of putting hot sauce on a good steak.
Hey,
I want a divorce.
I can ruin a good steak. Not a problem.
Escalated quick.
If I don't pay attention to it.
So, what's everybody's favorite cut? I am usually a filet guy, but in addition, for my recent adoption of black coffee instead of coffee with cream, I think I would like to, for 2023, I think I'm going to try to make the move from filet to ribeye.
Okay.
Yeah,
I do the bone-in filet.
Yeah. One of our buddies, he always swore by ribeye. He loved cooking. I'm always been a filet guy. I do not like chewy pieces. If I get a chewy piece, I'll literally lose my appetite.
Yep.
But I do like a porterhouse. That.
Oh yeah,
suffice for me. But
Yeah.
Gotta have big appetite
porterhouse
for
are great.
that one. So.
Just something about having the bone in there. Just the extra flavor that so bone-in filet. I think I had a bone-in veal chop one time.
Can't say that I've had that before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think was it? Now, what's ossobuco? Isn't that?
That is.
We're talking about Italian.
Yeah, so it's on a thing. It's like a. It is a bone, but it's.
I think I've had that once.
Bone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the leg. The leg bone goes through the middle of the ossobuco.
Okay. Yeah, I remember having that. That was delicious. Yeah.
Ale house.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. It's ossobuco.
Ossobuco.
And how do you guys like your steaks cooked? I'm usually a medium or medium rare guy.
Yeah, I'm medium.
Super
too.
well done. Burnt. No, I started as well because growing up. Yeah, no, I mean, growing up, talked about having, chewy pieces. I mean, my mom, got, I love her, but she, when she would choose, cuts of meat that were just chewy. And so for me, I was associating any kind of steak with being overly chewy, lots of fat, didn't like it. And then also meaning, I wanted it totally cooked because I thought it kind of cooked the fat away a little bit. So I came from, as a kid eating everything well, and I've graduated to medium at this point, and I can enjoy, especially a filet that's medium, not a problem,
Well, the only time I'll go well done. Oh, sorry, Richard, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's a cost benefit analysis, if you will. I would guess for, the grade or quality of meat and how long you have to cook it, really. So, like Dan, you were saying, get maybe that was a for lack of a better word, cheaper piece of meat. So
It was.
If you threw that in, say, like a slow cooker for like 10 hours and that comes out, I mean, like, oh, I bet that would be gorgeous. But, putting something in a frying pan, you got to have a higher grade quality. Like Gordon Ramsay says, is like, that's why you have a cast iron, you put it in there and you sear it and, you do all that kinds of stuff. So,
Yeah, there was a guy I worked with at Symantec when I was there, Dan, like in 2006 and 7. This guy, Rob, his favorite thing to do was buy really cheap cuts of meat and try to make them taste as good as he could. And so as a result, he would usually low and slow was the way that he would make that happen. I like the only time I'll occasionally do well done. And the only time that I'll do well is if I'm getting a hamburger at a barbecue at somebody's house and I don't know them that well and I don't know how seriously they take their cooking or their food prep. I'm like, I'll just have mine well done. Thanks.
And then it probably comes out like a hockey puck. So there's no window of like, oh, that turned out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
delicious.
It's a little charcoal briquette, very small, very black, right in the middle of a bun.
Yeah, go ahead and put that back under the grill there. It'll be all right.
I think there's still some smoke left in it. Let's go ahead and throw it on the pile.
A little way to go there.
All right. So the reason we've got Richard on here, besides the fact that we like talking to him, and we do that a lot, is all three of us are customers, clients, patients of direct primary care doctors. And last week we had on Dan's current and my former doctor, Dr. Muzzy. And we all like this model because we feel like it saves us time, it saves us money, and it also incentivizes us to take care of health issues when they're new instead of waiting until they're catastrophes. So, Richard, I know you're a bit of a research nerd like Dan and I are, maybe even a little bit more when it comes to this issue. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience, how you came to figure out that direct primary care was the best option for you, and how'd you pick which doctor you wanted to end up going with?
So I really kind of, I don't know, in the whole aspect of it, I kind of reverse engineered how I came across direct primary care. Most people would be looking for a doctor, and then they might stumble upon direct primary care, whereas I stumbled upon direct primary care, hearing about it in the, I would say, macro sense about in regards to healthcare and how it operates in our country. How, we have a direct primary care where you go to a hospital system. So I had first heard about Dr. Josh Umber through talk radio, and they were talking, and he kind of explained this had to be in 4 or 5 years ago. And so I was like, wow, that sounds kind of interesting. So I took the viewpoint of we could really change the healthcare system in our country if we go more towards this type of system. So I got really into it and looking at it and, researching our current system. Kurt may have mentioned before. And just to let everybody know, I'm not Kurt. I'm his twin brother, just for all your viewers out there. So I didn't dye my hair and grow it out or anything like that. So I took that view, more of a macro view, I'll say. And so I'd followed for a number of years. I only got, and I'll get into more about my own personal, experience and how I, found my doctor. But doing all of this research about direct primary care, I never had a direct primary care doctor. I'd never been to the doctor. I hadn't got, and usually I'm very private about my life, but in this setting, I feel it's, there's a lot to learn about it, for men and people in general. I think there's an aversion, people advert, going to the doctors. There's this, people are very much, there's a negative connotation, I'll just say. So, I was in a relationship with somebody and she's like, oh my God, you haven't been to the doctor. How can you? I was like, yeah, I haven't had a physical. And I think the last time I got a physical was in high school. So now we're going on pushing, let's just call it 30 years. Never had my blood drawn, never been to the doctor. our family has high cholesterol. I've never had that checked. So it's kind of one of those things, you're getting into your 40s and this stuff starts building up. So I broke down and I said, okay, I'll go to the doctor, like it was, something that's kind of a pain to do. So I ended up looking up a direct primary care doctor because I figured since I'm such a big advocate of this, I might as well practice what I preach, and found a doctor here. And really, and people ask, it was funny, I was taking Uber the other day and I was like, oh, I was dropping my car off. And he's like, oh, just talking about, oh, you're dropping your car off. And I was like, yeah, I'm getting it fixed. But, I have a mobile mechanic, and I was talking about that, how it saves some money. And I was like, oh yeah, I've got, things like this, are really great, like a direct primary care. I just happened to throw that in there. He's like, oh, what's that? So the whole Uber ride home, I'm having this whole conversation about direct primary care. So he's like jotting it down and writing it down and everything. So it was kind of funny. But so I just tell people, you literally just Google direct primary care, and you have to be specific about it because it's not just primary care, it's direct primary care. Those are two different models.
Right.
And we could probably, and when I had talked to Dan previously about, looking at the macro view of healthcare, I'm like, that could be, we could get to probably talk 3 hours about that. So, but, if people are interested in it,
Richard, for our listeners, why don't you just give like a one or two sentence or overview of the difference between direct primary care, and especially what attracted you to that model versus what we're doing now? Because you mentioned previously you were interested in it because you saw that it could really change the way our healthcare is run in this country. Just if you don't mind sharing briefly, you don't need to go all the way down a rabbit hole with it, but just a little overview so people can kind of get on the same page.
Yeah, Dan knows he needs to box me in. So, and I don't know how much your direct primary care spoke about. That's why I kind of wanted to limit myself. I don't know if, everybody's kind of, being redundant, but, it's basically a subscription model. And it is different from concierge medicine. Those terms are used kind of interchangeably, but they do have differences there. So, subscription model in my particular case, pretty much everything's included. So, like I'd mentioned before, I'd never had blood work done. So it's this kind of thing where, now I get it done 3 or 4 times a year. And so you don't pay any copays. Obviously, you can go in. People are like, it's funny when I talk about people, they're like, so what are the copays? I said, there's no copays. And so even something as simple as that, it's pretty straightforward. They're kind of like, but you can see that people have a difficult time, trying to process that. It's so very simple. And the doctors absolutely love it because the reason they have copays and this kind of insurance and, it's just paperwork and all this. When you have a subscription model, there's no paperwork. So they're like, wow, I can actually spend time with my patients kind of thing. So that was honestly, when I had first signed up for direct primary care, I was like, well, I've been talking about this so much. I should be doing this. I should be gaining my own personal experience, not just getting on my soapbox or in a pulpit and kind of talking about it. So that was really all there was to it. I just Googled him. He happened to be my doctor, went to the University of Florida. So I was like, sounds good. I'll try him out. His ratings on Google were phenomenal. So, or his office, I should say. And so, that was kind of like, you click on their website, you sign up, you pay an initiation fee, and that's kind of all there was to it. I didn't really have any, I read his website and everything, and every office, they'll have how they handle their model, their subscription model. They're all pretty much standard. Our older brother in Hawaii, he was like, hey, I heard, you kind of talking about this. And I said, dude, just Google direct primary care. And I did a little bit of research for him. I said, hey, here's a couple of offices that I found on the island, on the big island that he lives on. and he found somebody that way. So, that in kind of a nutshell, I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, but that was, I just kind of went into it like, this is something I support, so I should do this. I didn't, I knew the business model. And from that point on, it's been, excuse me, everything that I had wanted and more, because, it's very easy to do. People still can't. Like, yeah, you just call up your doctor and you just show up. He's like, yep, you can come in tomorrow. People are like, you can get in to see. I got into it with one guy. He's like, well, you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, I can call up my doctor if I need something. I can show up tomorrow or the day after if he's booked.
Right.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I'm like, this is how it used to work, So,
So I mean, up until the point of where, you were, you said an ex had said you haven't been to the doctor. What do you feel like for you was kind of limiting you from going to the doctor up until that point? Was it just you didn't feel like you needed to, or it was just a little bit more of a hassle? What I guess I'm talking about, the traditional primary care model. What was going on for you, just out of curiosity, that was stopping you from going to the doctor?
So I think it's twofold. For me, there was a personal reason, and I think, I'm going to use this term a lot, the macro reason, like the general reason that I think most people don't go to the doctor. The first reason was, going to get a checkup. I have a phobia of needles. Like, I hate needles. I have what they call a strong vagal nerve. So start poking stuff, and it's not a pain thing. It's just like, it's a complete psychological thing. It's like people who hate spiders, they're not really that bad. You look at one and people freeze up, like they have just this visceral reaction. So it's kind of like, but I've kind of conquered that a little bit. And so that was, going to the doctor and having that kind of thing. The other part I think that prevents a lot of people outside of my own personal reason is going to the doctor is really essentially going to the hospital. And so when you go to a primary care doctor, you're going through the hospital. And that's, there's this feeling like I'm going to, and I'll just kind of put my own personal opinion on this. I'm going to be around other people who are sick, or, going to a hospital, people are in a vulnerable position. They're either having things done or they're not at a good point in their life. They're getting a checkup. Going to get a colonoscopy, is that a major surgery? No, but you need to get a checkup. You could be, getting bad news, going there. It's not a very welcoming environment. Kurt and I used to.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a real happy.
Yeah, Kurt and I used to sell medical devices. He may have mentioned that. And I always remembered, I think, Dan, I had mentioned this to you, walking through the hospital. Now, I'm just here to sell an instrument. I have no, I'm healthy. I'm not there in any other capacity except a business capacity, but it was still uncomfortable for me. The fact that sometimes we had to go to the purchasing department, and for some reason they put the purchasing department near the morgue. So on more than a few occasions, I'm sitting there walking by the morgue, like I was like, so that was another aspect. I have a whole list of I was like, make sure I check off all these points. So it's like, oh, I gotta say that. So that was another thing, was just this environment. And what really changed my perspective was, going to a small direct primary care office. And this is true of other doctors, who are primary care doctors. They may not have the direct primary care subscription model, or they're in other facets of the industry. A smaller office is so much more welcoming. It's kind of like, I think I mentioned this kind of analogy. I always speak in analogies because it helps me to really understand. It's like, if we're going over each other's house and be like, oh, hey, Dan, if you said, hey, my doctor's going to be over there, why don't you come over to my place and he'll check you out? You'd be like, okay, that doesn't sound bad, because you're at your buddy's house. It's a comfortable environment. There's not that, this aura around it of, there's just this connotation of going to the hospital. And that's what the hospital used to be. It used to be an emergency thing where you're having surgery. So I think when you kind of decentralize it, when you get that away from, these levels of care, I think it really puts a much more relaxed, a much more environment of it'll make people more proactive. And that's what happens. That's what happened with me just me personally. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, Dr. Muzzy's office is similar. It's very comfortable. It's almost like you're visiting a friend. There's coffee there. They offer you a seltzer or water when you first walk in. It's not medical. The walls are like a light blue, very calming and peaceful. And it really, from the beginning to end, there aren't tons of people, that are in the waiting room, sniffling or,
somebody screaming,
moaning with any screaming, right? There's no blood, right? And so, I like the model because it's almost like you're working with, a health coach and you're already a little bit concerned. You might be concerned about something. So, have things that are a little bit more comfortable in the environment, as well as a health spa is a great way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to talk about Dr. Muzzy's new office, because I was only a patient for a brief time when she switched over to that place that she's at now in the Dr. Phillips area, and it really does feel like, someplace you're going for a facial or some Botox. I mean, not that I would know exactly what that is. You can tell from obviously, based on these wrinkles, I have no exposure to the use of Botox, but it is like a medical spa. Now, my primary care doctor in Winter Park, I've never been in the office when it wasn't just him. So he doesn't even have like a receptionist or a nurse or anything. It is just his office, an exam room, a waiting room, and a bathroom. And that's it. And he just hangs out in there with his computer until one of his patients has to come in for something. And it's just him. He does all his own paperwork and everything. And he wears a polo shirt and khakis or a dress shirt and khakis. And it's extremely casual. Usually I'm just popping in there to get a prescription or having them take a look at something, and then I'm in and out real quick on my way. And as laid back as it is, and as easy as it is, and inexpensive as it is, it's the best of all worlds for me. I like it.
And I think that's the other thing. So, transitioning into, our personal experiences and just the environment. Now you get into, it's like, oh, great. Well, yeah, that sounds awesome, but sounds expensive too. Right. And I feel like like a pitch man here, like, here we go. He's going to hit us with the pitch. But, depending on your age, the monthly fee, kids are a lot less expensive. And I think most direct primary care, they're within a range. They could differ by $5 to $10 a month, depending on age. Over 65, I believe is more expensive. We're middle age. So, you could be looking at anywhere $75 to $100 a month. But, I go in, I get a full blood work panel done 3 to 4 times a year. Now, mind you, I never had one done. I think maybe the last time when I was in middle school, or I think it was in middle school. So I had no idea what, basically, I had no idea how healthy it was. I felt like, I feel okay. I feel fine. I feel good. So, the full blood panel is going to be anywhere from $50 to $60. Whereas, you go into the hospital system and you could be paying anywhere from $500 to $600. Medications, prescriptions are, I think there have been a lot of advances as far as, prescription and people like being able to get prescription drugs, significantly cheaper, good RX. I mean, I don't want to pitch anybody's app or anything like that, but there are apps and everything. Doctors use those in direct primary care. They can send you, oh, yep, here's the thing. Go ahead and, grab this. And so a significant savings, actually. And I remember if you want to get a good idea, if people want to watch on YouTube, Dr. Josh Umber does a few. He was one of the early doctors, I think, and there might be others who have done pioneering work. I don't want to impugn anybody else's effort in the industry, but he's got a few YouTube videos that are very informative in how he kind of started and how my doctor went to his he does, he helps train them. They have their own software that they use as far as on the back end of it. So he went to work with him and everything. So it was really interesting to learn, kind of the back end of it, how they do all that kind of stuff. But, in office procedures, I went in, an EKG. I was like, hey, can you do, a thing with my heart? I'm thinking, again, it's breaking this perception of what it takes to be healthy, what kind of things. I was like, can you guys do like an EKG? Because, with my heart, my mom, our mom just had a procedure, I want to get ahead of this kind of thing. If there is an issue, I need to learn about it now. He's like, yeah, go ahead and just lie down. And I was like, no. And then my next question is, okay, well, what do you have to do here? Are you going to like jab needles and probes in my body? And I'm going to be like, yeah, just a bag of dirty laundry on the floor. Cause I'm like, so yeah, he was just like, attach the leads right there and does the printout. He, does the printout right in the office. He's like, yeah, everything's good, man. And he's like, perfect. I was like, great. Any other procedures that you might want to have done to get checked, they can obviously refer you out. I wanted to get my heart checked for calcium because that's a big thing when that flakes off and, heart attacks and that kind of thing. So, that's one of the issues with, I would say maybe men, anybody could correct my information on that. But, as men get older and you don't check your heart and, everybody's like, well, we hear these stories about, I know so-and-so, they died of a heart attack or they had a heart attack. They're so healthy. They run, they do all this. And it's like, well, didn't have your heart checked for these other things that are going on. So I was like, yeah, can you check my heart for calcium? He's like, yep, go ahead. And again, I asked him, what do you have to do? What does that entail? Mm-hmm. You have to jab me, do that. Cause I do have to let him know, if you're going to start probing me, I'm like, I got to know because I need to be lying down or I need to, prepare myself.
Right.
So,
sure.
He's like, no, you lie down on the bed and they put you in this big machine and, it does basically a digital scan of your heart. So this thing, and you just lie down, it's comfortable. And I was like, what does that cost? He's like, $100. I was like, done, let's go.
Right.
So it's, this preventative care is so much less expensive. I always tell people, and this is something I try to get people to understand. If you wait to get your health checked, the older you get, the more expensive it's going to be and the more painful it's going to be to correct any issues.
Right.
If you've got heart disease now, like me and my family, if you have high cholesterol, if you take care of it now, depending on if you want to go holistic or you're like, I'll just get on one of the cholesterol drugs. It's $4 or $5 for 100 pills that you take one, depending on how many milligrams, as opposed to when you get older and they're like, yeah, we're going to have to break your ribs open and go and do, a bypass. Like, oh, geez, wish I would have spent $4, every 4 months to pop a pill every day for crying out loud. So, it was,
it's just like the check engine light on your car. If the check engine light comes on and you deal with it as soon as it comes on, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper than if you just hope that it goes away.
Right. And when you're driving down the interstate and, something goes wrong and you're like, oh, there's nobody around that kind of help you out. It's a great analogy. So,
yeah.
And it diffuses that perception. And I know a lot of people in general, I know, this is, Men's Health, but I think it's really pervasive. I don't want to find out anything bad. I'm like, well, yeah, guess what? Nobody does. But
right.
Not educating yourself is going to exacerbate the problem. It's going to make it a lot worse. And of course, this gets into a general well-being, it's kind of a cultural thing, That's why I didn't want to get too far into the weeds because, this transitioned to a micro level, but on a macro level. I mean, they use a lot of people, the buzzword now is systemic. It's a systemic problem. It's a cultural, psychological problem now that there's an aversion to this. This doesn't even get into on the doctor's side of it. I mean, there's a massive issue there that. We can say for another time, talking about it in a general thing, but, doctors love this system because, no paperwork. It's so much easier that it can actually, my doctor, because I'll always talk with him, I spend about 45 to 60 minutes with him. He was like, yeah, when I had like 4,000 patients at the hospital and it was so hard. And I was like, wait, how many patients did you have? And he's like, yeah, about 4,000. I'm like, I'm sitting there and I reacted in a way that somebody would if somebody wasn't telling them the truth. Or like, that's not possible. There's no way that's possible. He was like, yeah, no, right. It's not. He's like, they look at the back of your head and you're kind of typing, looking back. And, there's actually less doctors are getting into the business. There's the suicide rate among doctors is increasing because, just of all the pressure that's put on them. And I'll just kind of finish up with the last point, in that aspect. My doctor told me that now there's an issue with doctors getting sued by insurance companies because of the paperwork. So he was saying a doctor he knows, when he was filling out the insurance form for one of the patients, he either checked the wrong box or forgot to check a box. Well, what people don't understand in the insurance business when doctors are dealing with insurance is you're filling out all this paperwork, then you send that paperwork off the insurance company. The insurance company compensates the doctor. Okay, I did this procedure, it's X amount of dollars, and we'll compensate you this much money. Well, because a wrong box was checked, the doctor was getting, I believe, more money than he should have been, only based on the paperwork. Not that he did the wrong procedure or he's trying to commit fraud. He just didn't check the right box or mischecked one. The insurance company came back years later and said, we're now suing you because you overbilled us, suing him for $500,000. And I was like, well, and now I'm like, well, wait a second. How the hell is the doctor going to pay that? And he's like, well, they don't, they'll settle out of court and maybe they'll settle for, half of that or maybe a quarter of that. I'm like, well, wait a second, now I'm like, wait. So now a doctor's got to worry about, most doctors don't, malpractice or, what if I make a mistake? And I was like, right. With the patients. And now I got to worry about the insurance companies too. It's like, oh, you know what? I'll just, I'll go run a doggy daycare. Screw this, where and it's nuts. So that's just to say this system, there's not that paperwork, they can sit down. And that's the kind of thing too, when you look at, why it's so much better to come to a direct primary care as opposed to a hospital system is, when a doctor has 5 minutes to work with a patient, what kind of, let's look at it in a business aspect. What kind of, customer service is that? If you walked into, and I think Dan, I had mentioned this in an analogy, you walked into the auto shop, put your car in, like, hey, like you said, Charles, with the check engine lights on. Okay, well, I'll bring it into the, mechanic. I've got a problem. They open the hood and they're like, yep, this is what it is. Are you sure? Like, you just took one look at it. How the hell could you possibly? You cannot accurately diagnose any issue in 5 minutes and be accurate about it. I don't know any industry, going to a financial advisor, hey, I want to retire with a lot of money in the bank. All right, well, how much money do you make? I make X amount of dollars. Okay, we're going to do this, that, and the other. It's like, wait a second. What's my risk tolerance? What's my lifestyle? Where do I want to go to? All this kind of stuff. So, that just goes to why it's, so advantageous, just emotionally and mentally. It's empowering too, because so when we talk about empowerment, men's empowerment, people's empowerment is going there and taking control in an environment that kind of, fosters that. Like, ooh, we want you to be, proactive about your health. And that's kind of, now I go more into my own personal experience with my doctor. I remember the first day going in there and, he'll do an initial consultation. So usually it's 45 to 60 minutes, the initial consultation. I think he'll spend up to, an hour and a half. And so that's kind of a preliminary, hey, get to know you kind of thing. It's like it's like a first date, so to speak. Hey, so it's literally like, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I was like, this is what I do for work, and this is my lifestyle. I'm active. I run or I play sports, or what is your diet? Tell me about what you eat on a daily basis. What are your favorite foods? Do we need to be concerned about anything? So it's my doctor, and I'm sure in the direct primary care space, there are a lot of doctors who become more, not a technical dietitian, but my doctor's very much into that. Well, okay, if you're, eating eggs with sausage every morning and your cholesterol's up, maybe we should, take that down a little bit. And I remember, because I was actually doing that, because I was like, oh my God, it's so good. And he's like, you know what? I think, and he's very very nice about it. He's like, you know what? I think maybe you should think about, taking that back or not doing that as much, because we noticed that, elevated this, that, and the other. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And he's like, oh, okay.
That's one of the things I really like about direct primary care is they have that time to be able to, communicate in a way that is, if you're rushed, and you only have a few minutes because you've got 4,000 patients on your, you're not going to have time to be, to really ask those questions and then communicate in a way that's going to be effective for you to make those changes. Right. So, I mean, with the few exceptions of like, as an analogy, the personal trainers who just bark orders at you and just do this, just get it done. They don't tell you how to get it done, right? The same thing with doctors who don't have a lot of time, or anybody who doesn't have a lot of time. There's not enough time to actually, really listen to what, where you're coming from and find the best ways for you to make those changes into your life. Whereas, with the direct primary care model, they have that time. They can work with you, and then and if also they could bring in other experts if they needed to, other professionals to help you make those changes. So I really feel like that's a big advantage. A lot of the the medical stuff and a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with can be improved by us making changes, but the traditional model, they're not going to be experts, and they're not going to have the time to tell you how to make those changes and support you when you make those changes.
Well, the good news or the bad news, depending on how you look at it, is I don't know that the traditional model of primary care that we're all used to with insurance and copays, in my opinion, it's got to be on its last legs. I don't see it lasting too much longer. I was
100%.
A couple days ago, I finished reading or listening to this book by Scott Galloway. And Scott Galloway is a professor at NYU, and I've shared some of his clips with you guys before because he's a frequent talk show guest, and I like his books a lot. And he wrote a book in the middle of the pandemic called Post Corona, talking about how he kind of saw the world changing after the COVID-19 pandemic was done. And one of the things he points out, rightfully so, is that the two industries where the cost has constantly gone up and the satisfaction has constantly gone down is education and medicine. Those are like the two. And so as a result, those are the two industries that are primed for some sort of a catastrophic disruption of their traditional models, because everybody's paying more and everybody hates both of them. And so something big is going to change. And he actually made a prediction where he thinks that's going to go in the space of medicine. He pointed out this really interesting thing about Jeff Bezos and Amazon and sort of their business model. I'm sure all three of us have heard time and time again, because we're all in the entrepreneurial space. You need to focus on your core competency. Spend your time doing the thing that makes you the money. Jeff Bezos and Amazon, they don't do that. What they do is they say, okay, if we want to have a website that sells a bunch of products, we have to have web servers. So let's build the best data centers and the best web servers in the world, and we'll make them so good that other people pay to rent them from us. And then he said, and now when people buy stuff from us, we have to design a model to deliver those items to the people that order them. So instead of, hiring somebody else to deliver our packages, we'll make the best package delivery company in the world, and then we'll have people pay us to use our trucks and get our stuff delivered. And so this guy's observation was, how long until he does that with employee health care? How long until Bezos says, okay, we have to provide health benefits to our employees, so let's build the best possible model for healthcare in the United States, and then let our customers pay us to use our healthcare model. So I wouldn't be surprised in the not too distant future if Jeff Bezos decides he's going to get into the healthcare business and completely turn everything that we're currently used to on its head.
And there's sometimes it's very simple changes that really change an industry. So taking on the Amazon and delivery packages, and we all know the FedEx, UPS trucks. I mean, you have to have a specialized license to drive those big trucks.
Right.
Whereas when Amazon says, well, what if we buy the biggest, van that anybody with a license can drive? And
exactly.
We'll get those less expensive and we'll get more of them, and you can just whip them around. And that's, that was kind of one of the businesses I was looking into, because I've, not Amazon type business, but in the healthcare business, being able to set up that model where you can almost plug and play it. So, being able to have a direct primary care, and so this gets into the larger macro picture where it's like, okay, well, what about insurance? Because people, and again, you have to break them out of this thing. Well, what about insurance? And I'm like, okay, direct primary care model is not insurance.
Right.
It has nothing to do with your insurance. And I always make, so, this is where the analogy comes in. It's like automobile insurance. Doesn't cover oil changes, doesn't cover brake jobs. So what happens if, one of these insurers said, okay, well, we're going to cover oil changes and brake jobs. Well, holy cow, car insurance would be triple, quadruple, because you'd be like, I'll just go in and get an oil change. I'll just go in and get my brake jobs every time because I'll just bill it to my insurance. Your co-pays would go up. Well, you're going to get an oil change. It's going to cost you $20 because oil changes now are $100. I mean, now for some vehicles, they are $100 to $200. Now you could be $200 to $300 for an oil change. It was like, well, I remember when they used to be like $30 or $40.
Right.
And I'm like, but so again, and that kind of goes back to what you're saying. So they're definitely, it's ripe when you look at, I remember when I first started working for my dad, and this is when the first time I realized what business is when they buy insurance for their employees. And this is the whole problem with the system right now, is it became more about maintenance. So the insurance company started taking on the maintenance portion, as opposed to us as individuals, like in a direct primary care. We're responsible for our oil changes and our brake jobs, so to speak. Right. And so, and like you said, with Charles, with healthcare and especially education, we've all seen, when you subsidize something, it throws the supply and demand model way out of whack. So, I mean, especially when you look at towns especially with with the automakers, when they have these unions that come together and they're trying to negotiate on behalf, and to sit there and say, okay, well, we're going to negotiate, and I'll just make up a number. Because I for this, I was researching Medicare and Medicaid. What does each state on their own pay per month for Medicare and Medicaid? And the numbers, when you start looking at it, like whoa, like holy cow, that's really expensive. As opposed to, I think before Obamacare, I think I was paying $50 to $60 a month for insurance. That was for me as an individual. And then when they started, and this is not to say anything about Obamacare, but when the government started mandating, oh yeah, you have to cover this and you have to cover that, because it wasn't that they were like, you have to do this. It became about maintenance. You have to maintain this. It's like, okay, well, now including, oil changes and brake jobs, now you need to cover transmissions. Like, boom, everything went up because that, in the market, you're covering that. So, and that's where you come in with a direct primary care insurance-based model and saying, okay, this group is bargaining for the company to pay, $1,000, $1,500 a month to cover the healthcare needs. I come in with a company with a group of direct primary care doctors and working with an insurance company or an insurance broker and saying, okay, well, I can get you a direct primary care and insurance, and I can get you that for $400 to $500 a month. I can cut it by half, or even 60 to 70% in some cases. So, and like you were saying, with whether it's Amazon or it's another company, I think the direct primary care model is gaining steam in that space. And I think, it's hard to, and again, I'm going into my pitchman kind of thing. It's hard to tell people. I'm like, if I could get you, and it's kind of like the Chris Voss, never split the difference kind of thing. It's like, if I could get you twice the satisfaction at half the price, would you say yes? And of course he wouldn't, would you tell me to, that I'm full of crap? Yeah, you might actually say, but I'll show you right here.
Right.
So, I agree 100% because it's, the part is, when you have that strong foundation of, I have a relationship with my doctor in that, I can text him, I can call him, I can video chat with him whenever, if I have a question, just as you would a buddy. Hey, Dan Charles, I had a question about this. And you'd be like, oh yeah, da, 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 da. I mean, it's really just it was funny when I first sat down with him because we both went to the University of Florida. For 15 minutes, we were talking about football. And we were talking about the schedule and the points, and we got into the weeds. And so he's got his laptop there, and he's like, "Oh yeah." So he flips it around, and we're looking at the schedule, and so and so had this many yards and everything. For 15 minutes, he would have to see 3 patients at the hospital, but
right?
He was bullshitting about football statistics. So, when you create that, again, we're in a top-down model as opposed to a bottom-up model. It's the triangle. Power should be concentrated at the bottom where the foundation is, not at the top, because if you have the reverse triangle, the power like this is going to crush. It's just not going to work. So, and that's the whole thing is when you get it to that foundation, when you have a direct relationship with your doctor, it's really empowering. And I think that's, with your podcast and what you guys are really trying to get out there, it just, you really feel in control of your life. You don't feel like you're going to get blindsided.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I mean, the doctor had the time to basically build a foundation of a friendship with you, from the get go, right from the beginning. And, I know my dad has seen a lot of doctors. He's getting treated for prostate cancer now. And he's going to see traditional doctors, and they see him for even for prostate cancer for 15, 20 minutes. And they're so cold and just really, my dad, he's just been going to them for years. So, he's got this loyalty to going and trust that, to see them. But, when I sat in with one of his appointments, and the guy, he contradicted himself multiple times from the very beginning of the conversation to the end of the appointment. And I mean, the appointment was only 15, 20 minutes long, and it was really I felt like he was almost confused with either who he was talking to or what he was saying. And I think that
take
goes.
A look at my chart again.
Right. Yeah. It's just and wouldn't quite answer questions. And it just looks like it to me, the impression was it's not that he didn't have the information. It just looked like he was a little bit overwhelmed. And that seems to be the case. I talked to my dad, and this one doctor, it seems to be pretty consistent with him. And so, when it comes down to something serious that you need help with, whether it's physically or, just emotional support, having a doctor that you feel like you can trust because you've got a connection even outside the office, like you said, Richard, with you both went to UF, and so that is important. And, I bet you my dad has no idea. He's been seeing this guy for 20 years, probably has no idea where he went to school, and you found out on your first visit. So I think when it comes to, important things, and keeping us alive is one of the most important things. You need to be working with a team that you trust. And that's
like your dad being a therapist in the therapy space, somebody comes in to see him and they're like, oh my God, I've had a tragedy in my life, or this, that, and the other. And your dad's like, oh man, that sucks. Okay, well, rub some dirt on it and walk it off. It's like, I'm not coming back here again. Are you out of your mind? Geez. So, and again, that's just, on the doctor side of it, they're like, oh shit. I'm like, I've got to see this many patients, and then I've got to spend 4 hours doing paperwork. And the level of frustration, and that doesn't even get into, I've got a family at home, and it's going to be 10 o'clock till I get there. I haven't seen my kids. I haven't seen, or my spouse. This is taking away from my family life. And there's you talk about on the patient level, on the doctor level, it's, because they're the gatekeeper right there, between, health. And it's kind of, I heard, and I don't know where it was, I think I'd mentioned this to you, Dan, before, is And I heard somebody say, when you go with a subscription-based model, you're paying the doctor to keep you healthy, as opposed to insurance, which you use when it's already hit the fan. Like, okay, that's a backstop there. So it's like, hey, we're doing this. And that's why why doctors can offer, in the direct primary care, they're not nickel and diming you. Anything done in the office, there's no charge there. So it's not like, I'm paying my monthly fee, but then I go in and they're doing this, that, and the other. It's like, there's nothing that they have no paperwork. So it's like, oh, you need a little something done here. Great. Yep. That's on the house. I mean, I had something done on my back, like a minor surgery. It took about 30 minutes for him to work on my back. And I was like, what do I owe you? He's like, it's on the house. Don't worry about it. It's like, oh, shit. I was like, you were digging in there pretty deep. So, it's just, it just eases that. It really takes my mind. So now it's like, I became so excited about it going with him. Now I want to develop an app for doctors, a doctor client thing where you can have that interaction, and it becomes, so, like I said, I do it every 3 to 4 months. So I have a statistical, thing that I can look at. So now it's almost like, it's like, I know this is a guy thing. Like when you're going to a place that you've been before, it's always kind of like, I want to arrive a little bit earlier each time. There's like a challenge to do that. Now it becomes a challenge. Like, this metric was a little bit higher. And I'm like, now I'm going to work on, see if I can get that number down, And again, that goes into with my doctor and with doctors in direct primary care, this, wanting to help your patients become healthier, having an active role in their lives, to some degree. After I talk with my doctor and I get my results back, we'll kind of go through it and we'll talk about it. And he's like, we did good here. And he's, you've got the ranges where like, everything fell within the ranges, which I'm, super analytical. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, we're, looking at that. And, after we're done that, he's like, okay, so, if there was something that was off, he's like, what are we going to do to try and get that back into range? So it's not like, again, the 5-minute thing where, oh, here you go. This sounds like this will work. It's, what are we going to do? We're not just going to say, oh, here's the numbers and that's it. It's like, what are you going to do to be proactive? What are you going to do to, get better? Like athletes, I had a bad game. Well, what'd you do? Well, I was missing jump shots. Well, what are you going to do for the next week? You're going to work on your jump shot all the time. And it becomes becomes a contest to, how healthy you can get. I mean, it's like me, I'm super competitive. So I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this one down. I'm not going to let myself, do this, that, and the other. And it's such a, it's so beneficial. It's really a great environment. So.
Yeah. I told Dr. Muzzy when we talked to her last week or the week before that subscription model is the same thing I use with my clients in my tech company because they pay me a fixed amount of money every month and they can call me one time or they can call me 1,000 times. And what's the best case scenario for both of us? If they never call me, because if I keep their systems healthy, they never have to pick up the phone. And if they never have to pick up the phone, I don't have, other than the preventative maintenance that I do in the background, I don't have to do anything for them. So it's a model where the provider's interests and the client's interests completely align. And you want to be in as many of those business and personal relationships as you can, where your two interests are lined up exactly. And so you don't have to work hard to keep things going really well. And that's what the direct primary care model does. And the traditional model does the opposite of.
Well, like for you, Charles, it's like, if you were doing it on a case-by-case basis and somebody comes to you and says, our whole system crashed, you're like, okay, well, where do I start? Like, I've never talked to you before. Let me see your system. It's like, oh boy, like as opposed to with one of your clients, you're on a regular, subscription-based model, their system. So, worst case scenario, if something were to happen to the system, you're like, oh, okay, well, let me just pop in. I've been there before. I know the people. I know the system. I can go in and take a look and we'll get you fixed right up.
Right. Yeah. If somebody calls me for a one-off disaster, here's what I know. I'm going to make a lot of money off you and I'm going to feel completely rushed and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so I would rather just have a predictable income stream and a predictable amount of work than be a professional firefighter where all I do is go from emergency to emergency. There may be some people that like that model and like that lifestyle, but it's not me.
It's a feast or famine thing too. And I know,
right.
And that goes, and again, harping on this again, there's the psychological mental state of it, and on the doctor's side, it's like, okay, but getting these emergencies of people coming in, whereas if you have the business aspect, now I have a steady revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not this like, okay, well, I'm not living emergency to emergency, or I'm not just waiting for the phone to ring and somebody comes in, or, and I have to deal with them, or, you feel good about seeing your clients. You've developed relationships with them. And I think with that, mentally and just empowering, there's just a control aspect of it. And I tend to be a little bit of a control freak. Probably doesn't show in my everyday life, but, to some degree there's value in that. And so a lot less control, more empowerment,
right.
Just wanting to be involved in your own life and your own health. So, yeah.
And there's so many things, on a daily basis, there's so many things about life you can't control, and so many things that are just going to surprise you. There's going to be situations at work, situations in the government where people are just making decisions based on their interests, and you're going to be affected by it, where for $65 a month for my doctor, I get to take a whole heck of a lot of control over my own personal health. And why that's a small price to pay, for me, $65 a month, which is, probably what, one or two copays on a traditional, not great insurance plan that a lot of our listeners probably have. And so for that amount of money per month, I can just be completely in the driver's seat. Whenever I have a question, whenever something's bothering me, I open up my phone, I text Dr. Matt, who's my doctor at Anchor Direct, and say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's a picture of the rash I got or the bug bite I got. Or, hey, can you give me a prescription for some ear drops or some eye drops or whatever? And he'll either say yes, or he'll say, come in tomorrow so we can take a look. And it's just super duper easy. And again, for not much money, what does that come out to? Less than $800 a year. It's just super easy it's just one thing I can take off my plate and not have to worry about. It's just there when I need it. And
it's kind of like, that's, if, and in insurance to be, 10, in some cases 10 times that, or, I don't think that's too far off to say, okay, well, guess what? I'm taking care of my own maintenance. So take that off my insurance and drop my price correspondingly. And I bet people would be absolutely shocked, how much money they save. And so, without getting too much into the macro side of it, now you look at, okay, well, Medicare, Medicaid, providing for, people in those demographics, and saying, well, what if we just took this model and put it over here? The amount of savings, you're talking about, trillions of dollars, and that's not a joke. That's trillion with a T.
Yeah.
Over years, and getting something better. It's like, man, you're going to love, it's like the Men's Warehouse. You're going to love the way you feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that the incentives of patients just doesn't match up with the incentives of politicians and shareholders when it comes to healthcare. And I think that's why the traditional model has lasted as long as it has in its current form.
And I think to some degree, part of it is people just aren't aware. It's just it's that classical, in business when and Kurt and I talk about this all the time with people. This is just the way it's always been done. Like, give me a break. I'm like, you know what? As soon as I hear that, I'm like, I'm thinking up a new way to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care if it works. I'm just for the the sake of doing something new that can be done. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Dan, what else you got for us?
I think this is good. I don't have anything else myself, but it was great to hear Rich's take on, where he came from and, the value he's getting out of it. And hopefully, some people out there can also, relate to that and say, hey, you know what? I never heard it this way before. you know what, this sounds good. I want to give it a shot. And, you know, like Rich said, he kind of went out on Google, checked out some of the doctors in the area, looked at the reviews that they were getting. And, you know, remember that you don't have to go if you're looking for a direct primary care doctor, you know, you're interviewing them too. And they, you know, definitely have, it's nice because they have an incentive with having a lot less of a patient load. They're going to have an incentive to put their best foot forward for you as well on an ongoing basis, but also when you're interviewing them to see if they are a good fit for you. So I really like that. I like that concept, and I like the model, and it's worked really well for me. And Rich, I'm glad it worked well for you. Appreciate you sharing your insights and about, you know, what your experience was.
Yeah, and I'd just you know, tell people to go, you know, look on, you know, YouTube or any, you know, whatever your favorite social media or, you know, search platform is, and just check out videos and listen to, you know, I mentioned Dr. Josh Umber. He's got some very informative talks about it. I believe there is a TED Talk about it. So just, yeah, I mean, a lot of those things will answer questions that people typically have. Well, you know, depending on what demographic you're in or what income scale you're on, you know, people are like, well, how can I afford that? And actually, people on a lower income, it's actually less expensive because they can get prescriptions and stuff much, much cheaper than if they're going to, and it would surprise a lot of people, I think. You know, there's a few of those examples out there. So definitely it's, yeah, all around.
All right, Dan, you think it's time to hit Richard with our 4 rapid fire questions?
I think it is.
Okay.
I'm going to switch my laptop. I think I'm about to go out, so I'm going to change my
very
angle.
Convenient.
Yeah. I didn't want my screen to go out as you hit me with a rapid fire, and they're like, look at this guy dodging the questions.
Okay. Have you switched? Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. What is something about you that people are surprised to learn?
Oh, good God. I guess the easy one is that I'm a twin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of low-hanging fruit. You know, I'm sure your viewers all around the world took a double take, you know, like, what is this guy? They're just changing the packaging and sending the same guy out there.
Did Kurt get better looking?
Ooh, I'm going to tell him you said that.
I hope he can hear it. We should tell him. Just let him listen. Let him hear it for the first time on the podcast.
When we were in college, that's when chat rooms became a big thing.
Yeah.
Some of your younger viewers might not know what that is, but my handle in the Yahoo chat rooms was "I have a good-looking twin."
That's
and
great.
So it was funny because people were like, "Oh, hey," and I'm like, even guys were like, "Hey, so what does your twin look like?" And I'm like, "I'm a guy. I'm not interested." They're like, "Oh shit, sorry."
That is a great line. The idea that telling people you have a very handsome identical twin brother.
I know it's like being
so
self-centered without being.
I love that.
Good move.
Okay, second, do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up when you were like 5 years old?
Yes. It was in the 4th grade, actually. So I remember. Are these supposed to be rapid fire? Because I'll go down a rabbit. I'll try and make it as quick
it's rapid fire on our end. You can take as much time as you want.
Okay. So I remember in 4th grade, my teacher, Mr. Leo, was like, everybody draw a box or a shelf or something like that. You know, very simple design. So I'm sitting there doing it by hand. And I looked at it, and it didn't look very good. And I remember crumpling up and throwing it in the trash, getting another piece of paper, and I got out a ruler. And I drew a 3D shelf. Wow. And my teacher was like, he's like, wow, that's really fantastic. Like, he's like, you should be an architect. And I remember, you know, I think that, you know, outside of my parents, that was the first time that anybody who I guess you'd say is a recognized authority figure, you know, gave me praise and said, oh, you should do this. So on the brain for a while, I had that I was going to be an architect, you know. That didn't turn out to be the case because I wasn't interested in architecture. I wish he had said you should be an engineer, and then I would have been like, oh my God, because I that's a part of me that I absolutely love. I just love designing stuff, coming up with stuff that's, you know,
where my brain wanders when I'm not engaged in other stuff is just designing stuff.
Speaking of engineering, this is something I told Dan before we started this morning, and I was so excited and enraged by. I moved my camper to a new spot over the weekend. I'm over closer to the Disney area now, and I'm on a very sloped lot. So I've got about 4 degrees of slope going left to right in my camper, which 4 degrees is too much to live with. I'm going to fix it today because it is impossible. My cabinets won't stay closed. My doors won't stay closed. It's terrible. But I had to use trigonometry yesterday to figure out how much one side of my camper had to go up. And it's been a solid 25 years since I left high school. And this is the first time I've used trigonometry. And I was both impressed that I remembered enough and enraged that it's taken this long.
That's when people say, you'll never use algebra. And I'm like, because I follow financial markets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, I use algebra all the time.
Algebra I use pretty quickly for, calculating percentages and stuff like that, but geometry and trig I don't use very often. And this is really the first time that I have in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Okay, next question. What's a piece of advice you would tell your 18-year-old self? And would your 18-year-old self listen or would he ignore you?
So I'll start back to front. Wouldn't listen, but what I would say is, I tell myself to go to school for engineering and not marketing.
Interesting.
100%, not even a question.
Interesting. Okay.
And I remember my dad, brilliant engineer. I know Kurt had talked about my mom before, but my dad is like super, super smart when it comes to, engineering. And he was an electrical engineer. That's what he got a degree in. So, and I remember him like, when when the first school that I went to is actually Stetson over here in DeLand for the first 2 years. And I remember him just mentioning like, asking them when they were walking around, showing the campus. He's like, oh, what do you guys have here for an engineering department? I asked them. She was like, oh, we really don't have an engineering department. I could kind of see, was like, okay, we're just kind of asking, but that was kind of, him, saying it. So that definitely, it should have been. It's one of the few things I look back on and said, if I had the chance to kind of take a left or a right, probably should have gone that way. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, the most important question. What's your favorite dinosaur?
God, I have to go with a raptor.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
You're the first. You're the first person that's chosen a carnivore. Everybody so far has picked the plant eaters.
Do you know? I don't know what this says about me. I didn't even think of an herbivore. The only thing that popped in my head were carnivores. Wow.
Huh. It's that killer instinct, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, Kurt loves to talk about when we both took the Star Wars personality test because those are so hyper accurate about, and he got Yoda and I got Darth Vader.
Interesting. So. I haven't taken that. I might need to. I love taking personality tests. I love Enneagrams and Myers-Briggs. I love taking those. So
I'm kind of a sucker for them too. Like, I think I'm a pepperoni pizza I got one time or something like that.
Have you done the Harry Potter ones to determine what house you would be in?
No.
Okay, you got to do that.
I'd probably be in Slytherin based on my Star Wars.
I am definitely a Slytherin through and through, and Dan's obviously a Gryffindor because he cares about what people think and he wants to be a hero.
I would have gone Hufflepuff.
No, that's my favorite dessert.
Oh man. I honestly, with Harry Potter, I did not know what Harry Potter was until the first movie came out.
Same.
Everybody's like, "Oh my god, Harry Potter!" I'm like,
yeah.
"What's this? That kind of stuff." And they're like, "Oh my god, have you read the books?" And I'm like, "There's books like what?" That's when I knew I was getting to a certain point in my life where I'm like, "Oh, what are these kids?"
Yes,
get off my lawn kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, I started. I have definitely lost touch with a lot of popular culture now. There's stuff I'll see on Instagram and memes and stuff like that where I'm like, what the hell are these people talking about? I have no frame of reference for what this joke is supposed to be. And, I do find conveniently, I'm dating a girl much younger than me, so she can get me up to speed on a lot of it. That helps quite a bit.
You've got an interpreter.
Exactly. Yeah. I've got a millennial that can sort of translate. I don't.
That's great.
But I'm sure there's going to be, in the not too distant future, there'll be stuff that Gen Z is talking about that neither her nor I understand.
Well, I've already started seeing on like Instagram and social media, like people in their 30s are talking about like they think like, oh my, there's a bitch about, oh, when I was in my 20s, and I'm like, yeah. It was like when I was in my 30s, I was still like, I feel like a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can carry off being a 20-year-old, either in demeanor or looks. And I was like, when it's in your 40s, that's when you kind of, I was like, oh, these start coming up. I'm like, why do my knees creak a little bit more? Like I'm doing that when you get off the couch, like oh, jeez.
Yeah, one thing I always tell people is, and this really applies to all three of us and Kurt as well, being our age and not having kids, we get to act like we're much younger than we actually are, which is fun.
Yep.
But the other thing is, so far my knees have been fine. When, I did that Mammoth March last, April, I think it was, over on the east side of Orlando, where you walk 20 miles in 8 hours. And by the end of that, my hips were the things that were killing me. Those are the joints that I know they're going to be trouble as I get older.
Those puppies would be barking.
Yeah, I was around mile 11 or 12, and I took like 4 ibuprofens, and then I was fine for the rest of it. But I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a problem. When a few more years, this is going to be an issue.
Yeah. Get your orthopedics now, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, probably should. All right, so I think that about covers it. Is there any other info or social media or anything that you want people to know, Richard, or would you rather keep a low profile?
I tend to keep a low profile. Honestly, I've been toying with the idea of kind of doing my own. You hear it's kind of the running joke now. Everybody's got their own podcast, but everybody's got a different perspective and a different take. And I think part of the reason for that is that, we talk about traditional industries, traditional ways, we're talking about direct primary care, but, I'll just call it the information industry, whether that's news outlets or wherever people get their news from, has transitioned from your traditional newspaper kind of thing to, YouTube, Rumble, podcast, Spotify, so it's kind of one of those things. I never, I'm big in, like you guys know, I'm big into the, the pop culture, following comics and movies and some of those guys in there. I enjoy that, the financial stuff. So I get most of my information from people who are posting YouTube videos. It's not from your traditional, here's even a news website where they've got the, articles and things of that nature. So yeah, my thing is, I can sit there and, talk about the federal budget and how we should balance the budget till I could probably go an hour and a half. People are like, how the hell could you talk about something like that? But I'm like, when you can, like with direct primary care, people are like, oh, great, get a doctor. But I'm like, well, there's more to it than that,
right.
So that's kind of been my thing. That's my struggle is, and I think for a lot of people trying to get into this space and, whether it's going to get a direct primary care doctor, pushing yourself out there to kind of make that first contact or make that first video. That's the kind of thing I would love to talk about is, taxes. People are like,
yeah, but
you reform Social Security. They're like,
you would be surprised. I mean, any topic that you feel passionately about, there's somebody that wants to hear what you have to say. And what Dan and I have found is that the key is just consistently put it out there week after week, whether you feel like recording or you feel like going to each other's house or you feel like, taking the time out of your normal, your day job. If you just set the time aside and you just keep putting stuff out, eventually people will find you. And if you're talking about the kind of thing that they're also into, I was just telling my girlfriend yesterday, the amount of binging I've been doing on extremely nerdy Lord of the Rings YouTube videos to learn more about the backstory of the new series on Amazon. I am just watching, at this point, probably dozens of hours of Lord of the Rings Tolkien videos on YouTube to learn more about the backstory of the new Amazon show. And I'm just so glad that there are people putting that stuff out there and they're well-made, informative videos that are teaching me exactly what I want to know to enjoy the show that I'm watching even more. And, thank goodness
it's
there's
interesting
people
that you
doing
mentioned that too. Yeah. Some of the pop culture guys I follow, people don't know there's a Tolkien society of people who are, you get like, and I would get called out if I were like a popular YouTuber saying something like, you get certified in the amount of knowledge that you have. And these guys who are making these, and whether they're talking about the Amazon series or they're talking about the previous one, was like, well, this is in this book, and what they're doing now, that's 500 years before this. And that's not, I'm sitting there like, wait, what? Like, they go, that's in this book. It talks about this. It's over here. This didn't happen. These two people didn't meet. They didn't do this. Or this is what happened when so-and-so did this. And this is what it's like, holy cow. Like, just the.
And that was, and I'll expose a little bit of what the nerdy stuff that I've learned watching some of these videos is, for the Amazon series, they have drastically compressed the timeline because otherwise the only people that would go from season to season would be the elves who are immortal. And, if they did the normal timeline, all the human characters would just die off and you'd have to learn about new characters every single season. So they got permission from the Tolkien family to compress the timeline of the show.
And I believe that Amazon only got what they paid like a couple of billion bucks for it. They only paid for a certain section of the timeline.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, there's other, chunks that are, which is, that's the only reason I learned how far back it goes was because I learned that Amazon paid for a certain subset of timeline. Like, I was like, holy cow, which just goes to show you the breadth of, what Tolkien wrote and just his imagination. It's just on a different level.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of stuff he has. I love learning about how some of those merchandising and licensing deals work. Way back in college, when I worked for, I opened the Lego store at Disney Springs, which was downtown Disney back then.
Really?
I was on the team that opened that store. And right before that is when Lego did their first licensing deal ever with LucasArts for the right to make Star Wars Legos. And I found out that Lucasfilm had licensed figurines of this size and smaller to one company and this size and bigger to another company, and Lego fit right in the middle. So that's the reason they were able to make a deal with them, because Hasbro or Kenner had the right to figures that were bigger than Lego, and some other company had the right to figures that were smaller than Lego, and Lego just happened to fit right in the middle. So that's the reason they were able to partner together and start selling all those Star Wars Lego sets.
Wow.
It's nuts. The Lucasfilm, when Star Wars came out, and I would, if people were interested in business, pop culture, whatever it is, research and look up for fun, the deal that George Lucas made, with merchandising rights. People it's like in Spaceballs when he makes fun, he's like merchandising. He's like, that's a joke.
Spaceballs, the toilet paper.
How much money George Lucas made, because it was kind of, and you guys can tell me if you think this analogy is accurate. It was when, with Microsoft and IBM, when IBM, we're just making the hardware. Who cares about the operating system?
Right.
Who cares about what runs it? So they were like, no, we won't do that. Whereas, the producers of, making the Star Wars movies, like, we're just doing the movie. Who cares about the merchandising? What are you talking about? Lucy's like, I get, and for your younger audience, VHS, we get the video sales, and it was kind of like, to see that shift was just, made an absolute killing, So.
Yeah, it was, he really, he had interest in things that I believe it was 20th Century Fox. That was the studio that he partnered with for Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Where he wanted things that they basically saw as a throwaway, like, sure, yeah, you can have that. We don't care about that. And that's how Lucas, was able to make all the money that he did, because he asked for rights to things that they thought, there's no money to be made there. You can go ahead and have it.
The psychological, it's like little things I never realized watching Star Wars. There's two iconic production studio intros. One of them is HBO back in the 80s.
Yes, I remember that.
It
Yes.
flies in.
Yes.
Some of our people will remember that. It was one of the most iconic things. The other is 20th Century Fox. So much so that I thought the intro to 20th Century Fox was actually part of the Star Wars. So that music was in my head. I thought I was watching. Every time I heard that on the TV, I thought I was watching Star Wars.
Yeah.
Really, that was just 20th Century Fox.
Right.
Excuse me. So that's kind of, in your younger years, those things are, implanted in such that you
Absolutely
esteem them and other things. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, when you finally get your pop culture or fiscal policy
I already have a name
podcast
for it.
going, yeah.
I was going to call it My 2 Cents, but instead of CENC, it was SENSE. It's like your common sense.
Oh, I like it.
So a few years ago, I would post a couple of things in regards to fiscal policy. And it was like, here's my 2 cents. And of course, I get the people like, that's not what it means. This is, I said. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, no, I get that. And so I was like, all right, me being like in my defensive years, I was like, you know what? How do I stick it to him? And I said, it's a double entendre. So
Nice.
All right. Well, once you get that going, we will be happy to both promote it and I'll guest on it. Dan, not so much because he doesn't participate in popular culture.
No, correct. But I'm going to start a spite podcast. It's called My 3 Cents, and
and it's going to be like, hey, I watched this thing. Go screw those guys.
Yeah. All you do is just watch things that Richard and I care about and then spoil the endings.
And he's like, wrong.
sounds like a plan. I'm on board.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I enjoyed this. I will see both of you at dinner tonight at 6:00 at Charlie's on International Drive. Now, don't worry, we're not putting this out, until Monday, so we won't have anybody crash it. So if you wanted to show up and object to any of our content, we won't be there when you hear this.
Yeah, the old Monday night at Charlie's. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a nice recurring meeting, but I don't think I could afford it every Monday night.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's when they serve all the flank steak nobody wanted, like Dan's mom used to make.
I like mine extra chewy, please. Yes.
Well, thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And, I remember you mentioning, sometime soon we'll have to get the four of us on and
Yes.
do a real BS storm of just, we'll have to allot maybe 2 or 3 hours for that because we'll just harangue about stuff. So,
hey, now that we're putting out the exclusive content on our Patreon, Dan and I need more and more ideas. So we should, and we are happy to split our long episodes into pieces. So we'll definitely have to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've been eyeballing a piece of recording technology that I haven't bought yet that will let us put 4 microphones into this little device and record 4 separate tracks, so we can actually get in a room sometime and record all 4 of us having a conversation. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, no, definitely.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys. I will see all of you again real soon.
All right,
bud. See you later.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks for spending time with us on the Mindfully Masculine podcast. If you like this episode or think that it would be useful for someone else, please leave us a review and follow Mindfully Masculine on Instagram.